Welcome to Saturday morning at ShmooCon19. This talk is about FedRAMP, what's wrong with it and how to fix it, with SheaNangle and WendyKnox Everette. And please take it away.
Thank you. And to reiterate before we start, thank you for coming out at 10 a.m. this morning to talk about FedRAMP of all things. Show of hands before we get into the actual deck. How many people here have worked on a FedRAMP project? Okay.
Yeah, who are the rest of you and why do you want this pain at what is 7 in the morning Pacific time for me? Okay, close enough.
Good point. Yeah, close enough. Cool. So, in case anyone just kind of wandered in and went, FedRAMP?
Yeah.
What? Well, I guess I'll stick around. Started in 2011 as a way for federal agencies to vet security of cloud products that they were planning on using for internal use. If you're selling a cloud product, do you have to have FedRAMP? I'm going to say the obnoxious federal compliance thing. It depends.
And Shay is not even the lawyer on this panel here.
But I do play one on TV. Officially, if you're selling cloud services to the federal government, it needs to be authorized under FedRAMP.
Services can be NIST 800-171 if you're giving a product.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, lawyer, nitpick.
So what happens if you don't and you still sell to the federal government? You get asked nicely to get FedRAMP authorization. There was a OIG investigation of the Department of Transportation. They published their report in, I think it was August of last year, that identified just scores, literally, of cloud services that hadn't been authorized under FedRAMP, and the outcome of that was a recommendation that they be evaluated to ensure they complied with FedRAMP. That was it.
So generally, the idea behind FedRAMP was this nice fuzzy, well, we'll vet things, we'll have a standard for everybody to know to meet, and so we know that everything that's going to hold sensitive information, and FedRAMP has low, mod, high, and also tailored, that turns off of the level of sensitivity of information that you have, and we have fairly standardized classification levels across the government. So cool, this will be great. We'll go through this one program. We know that the systems are really greatly set up to match the level of sensitivity of what they're gonna hold. It's gonna save everybody time and money and effort, and it will be fabulous.
Oh, and also, if you're selling cloud services to the federal government, you'll only really have to go through this once. And then you're in this one-stop shop marketplace, and other agencies don't ask for anything else from you. As you can tell from audience reaction, that is exactly what happens 100% of the time.
Yeah, OMB came out recently with a nice little memo. They're asking for feedback. I believe it's actually still opened. All of you who have gone through this process should definitely go to regulations.gov and figure out how to put a comment in on this. And they're like, yeah, it was built for a simpler time. And the security environment has gotten much more complex these days. I think also a lot of agencies are like, well, what's good enough for that agency down the street is not good enough for us. We have special needs. And so, you know, we don't trust this one-stop shopping. Jab board, even then, like, they want their fingers in there to assess things. So yeah, this is what happens. So a little about who are we? Why the heck should you even listen to us? Because we have scars. I'm Wendy. I was a software developer for a long time and then had a really dumb idea that I should go to law school. I went to George Mason Law School up the street and did a national security concentration. Went to a law firm for a little bit, and then I knocked around and did FedRAMP and high trust. Because sure,
why
attorney who's a software engineer, I should totally do the compliance stuff.
You hate yourself even more than I hate myself.
Yeah, and I really hate myself because I left that to go be a CISO at a company in a regulated industry, so it's great. So.
SheaNangle, I'm Director of Advisory Services at Echelon Risk and Cyber, have been in FedRAMP many years. Roughly 2013 is when I started, so it's still in its not even awkward adolescence at that point. This headshot, for the record, was literally taken like 9 months before I started working on FedRAMP stuff. I've been working on FedRAMP stuff ever since, and well, you can see the gray hair now, so you can see the side effects. Completely, yeah.
Cool. So we came here to air our grievances. So we're going to get into a couple of them. So I am very snarky about compliance frameworks and the negative impact that they have on real-world security, because I come from the startup world, and there's a limited amount of resources in terms of time and money and effort. And so I can get a little cranky. Like, I love the idea of FedRAMP. Yeah, we have a one-stop shop. The security controls are set so you don't have really overly burdensome security controls for things that don't hold information that's quite as sensitive. It seems like it should be great. But that is clearly not what has actually happened.
Yeah, great idea. Has it worked out? No. Anybody, just show of hands again, for people that have worked on FedRAMP projects. Anybody who is like, yeah, it's achieved all of its goals. Anyone?
It's hunky-dory. We love it. Yeah, for the people on the video who can't watch, there's not a single hand up in this room right now.
We're not surprised. So what's the process you go through if you haven't been through it before? Well, this easy. Wendy and I laughed about this right before we started today. Single bullet point, just prepare for it. Nothing major involved there. Nothing significant. Won't take years off your life. The first FedRAMP project I worked on actually started in 2014, and we succeeded in a record short amount of time. And after I finished, I'm like, 1 year. And I'm like, how did I manage this? Like, not the world's dumbest guy, but I'm not that smart. And I realized what it was I just moved out to the DC area. It was too expensive for my wife to move out without a job. So I was living by myself, but not single, for about 6 months. So all I had to do for 6 months was FedRAMP. And maybe cook dinner once every so often and then eat leftovers the rest of the time. Drinking?
No, you're missing the sponsoring agents.
Yeah.
We won't even get into
You're missing the FedRAMP ready. You're missing the 5 assessments you need to do because somebody fucks up.
Yeah.
Good point.
The fact that the poems will be rejected 14 times for arbitrary reasons.
Oh,
We'll get to those.
We'll get into that on the
Yeah.
And we tried to put everything in, but PowerPoint crashed because of the number of bullets. So.
Yeah. So, small interjection here. I've actually worked on more FedRAMP prep. They're the companies decided, fuck it, we're not doing this, than ones that I've actually fully taken through.
Yep. Same. 1 or more assessments for things that are not in compliance, you can't immediately fix. Prepare a plan of actions and milestones. I'm just going to leave that right there and make it sound super simple for right now. Then we're going to get into problems. Then after you're completely done with that, get authorized either by the Joint Advisory Board with a provisional ATO or by your sponsoring agency. Then you get into the joy that is continuous monitoring, and then you repeat that process until you quit or you stop running the program.
And then you get another authorization from another agency, because why the heck should we reuse? And
if you're a cloud service that does agile small releases once a week, you get into arguments about when you have to reauthorize.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. So I made an aside a few minutes ago that poorly implemented controls can decrease security. We're going to get into a couple of these when we actually go through some of the control things. In theory, this is what you tell the FedRAMP folks, like, hey, this control as written doesn't really make sense for our environment, and so we're meeting the point of this in a slightly different way. But you lose a lot of time and effort. Like I said, startups' resources are usually really constrained, and so this can be a big burden. And I actually, at B-Sides LV, many years ago at this point, was complaining with some friends, and we decided that we should write a paper on this. So should you wish to go dig it out, we did this at NDSS, and we did another paper for IEEE Security and Privacy, specifically on FedRAMP. I only got to pick a few of the controls for this talk, but we go through, I think this is an actual peer-reviewed computer science paper about how controls can get in the way of having really good security, because at the end of the day, if you're getting hacked and you're losing data to data breaches and ransomware, your company's going to shut down, and your nice shiny FedRAMP certification is going to do no one any good at all. So, yeah, all right. So it's not that Microsoft, literally, I want to pick too much on them here, but this is an example of a pretty big hack that's happened recently. They do have FedRAMP. I'm sure you've all heard about this, but basically folks in China got a hold of a skeleton key from Microsoft that came out of a crash dump that was pulled out of a secure environment onto a user's laptop, and they had some sort of access to the laptop through malware or so forth. That key should have been expired, but they were able to use it to reissue new ones. They used it to access State Department emails. The way that they pulled the emails was through not a normal mail reading activity, and so that activity didn't show up in the audit logs. Possibly it would show up if you paid for like a fancier plan, which Microsoft likes to charge you for things. And they have actually, to their credit, they fixed that. That mail reading activity is now available in lower level plans, and they tweaked the audit retention and so forth. But this is just, I was like, Microsoft spends tons of money on security. They have actually really fabulous security engineers, and they still had this problem.
Wendy, that's the only real world example you've got, right?
No, I've got another one for you. Actually, I had a few, but we had to cut them down. Circle CI, in about 2023, maybe this is 2022 and it actually happened. Again, malware on a user's laptop. Does FedRAMP have endpoint controls? Yeah, they've got a few. They also have some antivirus and so forth controls. Again, they were able to exfiltrate, and this is another issue that was found by the folks who are getting hacked. They saw activity on their GitLab, and they were like, how did this happen? And they had traced it back to Circle CI and let them know that they'd been hacked. So let's talk about a couple controls. Before we jump in, Shay, what's this table? It's a really big, detailed table.
It's all of the controls.
Counted all the controls.
I hates them.
Yeah.
I love Excel spreadsheets, but I still hates them. The first FedRAMP project I worked on was for an unnamed agency. Insisted that anytime we made any revisions to the documentation package, documentation for FedRAMP, if you haven't worked on one, is huge. That we couldn't transmit electronic copies of the documentation package. We had to print out in triplicate and put into binders 3 copies of the entire documentation package, which meant as we were going through the preparation process, roughly every 6 to 8 weeks, I'd get in the train from Vienna, where I was living at the time, coming to downtown DC with a rollerboard suitcase in hand, full of in total about 3,000 pages of documentation that I had also had to print myself at the office because of the sensitivity of information.
So who owns stock in the paper company?
Good point.
And printer cartridges.
Yeah, we went.
Oh, yeah.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, I gotta say too, if you do get to work on these electronically, like the SSP docs are like hundreds of pages long, and if you're trying to use a not fabulous online document editing software, I'm not gonna name names, you get a lot of data corruption of the docs because you have 30 consultants writing in it, and it's good times.
In my experience, we'll pick on Microsoft a little bit, you get those problems in Microsoft Word as well.
I didn't say it.
That documentation package routinely, and it was just me working on it 90% of the time, routinely crashed Word just because of complexity.
So Shay, tell me about our friend Phipps. Oh, I have a great story after he's done.
Anybody in here on the COE Center of Excellence Discord for federal compliance? There's a bot. It's one of my favorite things online. Anytime anyone enters the word FIPS, it automatically replies back and says, just so you know, FIPS is stupid. It is one of my favorite things in the entire internet. I got much more joy out of it than I probably should the first time I saw it. FedRAMP still references FIPS 140-2. Regardless of our feelings about FIPS, that could be a whole other talk. They replaced it with FIPS 140-3. Remember, math is hard. Over 4 years ago.
So my FIPS story here is I was working on a project with an acquired startup, and like many good software companies, we worried a lot about like identity theft, and so identity is the border and so forth, and so all the developers had to use YubiKeys to access the prod environment. This was before there was a FIPS version of the YubiKey, so we went through FedRAMP. We had to basically, for the GovCloud, which we'll get to the whole thing about GovCloud versus prod later, you know, like it's an entirely separate thing. We had to take the developers' YubiKeys away, and I had a great time being like, I'm sorry, like, these are great. They're much more secure than what we're making you do, but we have to because we have to check this checkbox because the YubiKeys are not FIPS compliant yet. There are now FIPS compliant YubiKeys, so if you're doing FedRAMP, you should get those. Yeah, we took them away. Yeah, this may have been like one of the founding seeds of my I hate compliance when it gets in the way of security a lot of times. Yeah, here's another one where the FedRAMP controls as written conflict with other government advice. NIST 863 tells us not to rotate passwords. I love to point to this. I'm doing vendor security assessments, and they want to know why we don't rotate all of our passwords every 30 days. And I'm like, oh, because we have to use randomly generated ones, and they're in one password and so forth. But if you're FedRAMP, you have to rotate your passwords. So.
Yep. Some protection mechanisms. Media? Yes. Keys, passwords? Nope. Nothing. As a result, you're in a situation where you have potentially easily interceptable information that can unlock password-protected devices if they've been gotten by whatever adversary you're facing.
Yeah, similarly, yeah, you have to enforce data integrity checks. Doesn't necessarily say anything about tamper controls on those. This is one of my all-time favorites. I actually get this all the time in vendor security reviews. People are like, oh, you put up the little magical incantation text on the login screen saying that this system is only for specific authorized use. And I actually very carefully went through all the controls the other day, and so SC13 is one of the big encryption ones. Nowhere in FedRAMP does it tell you that you should encrypt data with customer-specific keys, which is like a core thing that helps protect you. If you lose one encryption key, at most you're going to lose one customer's worth of data. I have very strong opinions about which one of these is a much more effective security control. Like, fine, put up the magical incantation text. I had to maybe waste a developer's time for a few hours to edit the file, push it through CI/CD, get it out. And the other one is probably a fundamental architecture change for older systems, but if you're doing modern security, you should damn well have customer-specific encryption keys, and those should be in an HSM, which...
But Wendy, without the banner, how will people know they're not supposed to do bad things?
Yes. Yes. Yeah, HSMs are not really required. I mean, I don't know, I see these as table stakes. Like, if you're using KMS, you get it. You should be using KMS. We don't really have requirements for this. Scanning. So Tenable.io and some of the other ones do actually now have FedRAMP, but there's not actually a requirement that the scanner that you have to run at least monthly to do your vuln scans for your Kanban, that have FedRAMP authorization, and if that scan is any use at all, it has to be doing an authorized scan. And so you're putting login creds into a system that, we hope is secure, but this FedRAMP doesn't actually check on that.
So AC04, information flows between between interconnected internal external systems. Needs to be well controlled. That's great. Local network transmission, yeah, just it's the Wild West. Do whatever you want. AC01 and AC03 are about access control procedures and policies. There's so much latitude in there. I know firsthand. What constitutes something that's good, and so many other domains within FedRAMP really flow down from whatever you've established there. Whether or not something's sufficient is honestly completely subjective.
Yeah, in a modern cloud environment, it's identity control and it's change management. Like, that's where you really need to put most of your attention, and they let you write your own processes. I mean, they're gonna vet them, but there's still a huge amount of loosey-goosiness that can happen there. Yeah. Yeah, well, there. Oh, we're gonna get to some of those. We got you. And then also, as a consumer protection privacy attorney, there's not really actually anything in FedRAMP that really says you can't use this stuff for ad targeting and so forth. It's just not actually ever called out. So why are there problems? Because we can't have nice things. This is where I get a little bit into my George Mason educated attorney at times. It can be really hard if you have overly specific regulations, because then you get locked into things. One of the few things I do like about HIPAA is that it is so loosey-goosey that it doesn't really get very much in my way of implementing really good security. So like, we have our customer-specific encryption, and we use YubiKeys, and nothing in HIPAA is telling us we can't, versus that issue that I had with FedRAMP. And so basically, on the other hand, though, without specific things telling you what you need to do, like, can every company out there that wants to provide services to the government come up with good enough security on their own? Like, there should be some guidance. And so it can be really hard to find the balance, and part of the issues with FedRAMP is that if they haven't found the balance right, it's very hard for them to pivot and address that issue.
So, speaking of, you pay a 3PAO to do your assessment. They'd really like to come back the next year for your partial assessment, the year after for your partial assessment, the year after that for your full assessment. I'm going to point directly at you for having raised the issue. You can easily find 3PAOs that, for the right price, will do whatever you want, easily. I know some of them by name. I've interacted with some of them. Yes.
Your surveillance audits and through your full audit. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you're a really tiny one, maybe there's less of an incentive, but yeah, it's just the repeating nature of this really drives you to it. Oh yeah. Let's just implement it. So pretty much every FedRAMP project that I've done has been on either Azure or AWS. And a lot of people walk in going, oh, we'll just pull our code down and plop it into GovCloud, and it'll be a breeze. Like, what are you worried about?
It's magic. I may be also somewhat biased against this in that I started off on FedRAMP projects that were self-hosted. So, but that's a whole other can of worms, which I'll also get into. It's not magic. It doesn't fix everything magically.
All those companies that promise that, like, you just give us your code and we'll run it, and like, you can use our FedRAMP authorization. Yeah.
It makes your documentation package simpler. I'll give it that.
Yeah.
It does. A lot simpler, potentially.
It's a matrix of responsibilities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Every cloud service provider has a matrix of responsibilities. We've dealt with this a million times.
Yep.
Yeah.
However, it doesn't mean you have none.
Yes.
And it doesn't mean they're going to always do the right thing.
Or it doesn't mean that they actually are ATO when they claim they are.
Go ahead.
Well, I'll just sort of start. This is the one that I feel the most. I have been in startup land pretty much my entire career. Doing FedRAMP is huge. And like I said, a lot of the times I've seen folks actually end up walking away. They had great tools. Maybe it would be wonderful for an agency, and it's just not worth the time and paperwork and so forth for them. I mean, on the other hand, if you're a big government agency like your DoD, I mean, well, DoD is like ITAR and all kinds of other things that are even more burdensome. Maybe you don't want a really tiny, like 6-person startup doing your stuff. You know, they have pretty excessive needs sometimes, and it may not meet it. So I don't know where the happy balance is there, but it's very much a problem that happens.
Yeah, so my experience has been a little larger, a little more mature companies, kind of from growth stage up to companies that are way too damn big for their own good. But I've seen, especially on the smaller side, you know, as I mentioned, the first FedRAMP project I worked on was self-hosted, and it almost killed me. And it almost killed the company in a lot of ways because of how much stuff had to be implemented and how much stuff that looking back on it now, I'm like, really, we did what? Why? We spent how much money?
So Shay, maybe we should make a special version of FedRAMP to help with this.
Wendy, that sounds like a great idea. I was on a number of the working groups that developed FedRAMP Tailored. Whether or not I have regrets about that is a whole other thing. Honestly, I think that program started off as a really good idea. Let's reduce the barrier of entry, especially for some of these less impact if something goes wrong systems. It started off great. However, I think the pendulum swung way too far to the other side. So now you have something that is so simple and so basic that the percentage of cloud service providers that can actually use it is like this. And so you've got a simplified version that nobody can use.
And it's not really actually simplified. Like, a lot of the stuff in there are some of the big chunks of FedRAMP mod. So my advice is always just do FedRAMP mod.
Yeah. I, having moved to consulting mumble years ago, I have yet to advise a client to try tailored at all. Yeah, it's for very low impact, kind of lower. Oh, yeah, sorry. The question was kind of 2-sentence summary of what tailored is. Very low impact software as a service only offerings. Can't really do much with authentication information. And it was meant to be for smaller offerings, smaller companies, lower impact offerings, make the barrier to entry easier. Did it make the barrier to entry easier? Yes, I will be the first to give the tailored program that. We succeeded on that front. Did they make it actually useful? No.
Yeah,
There's
so it's fewer controls.
I believe there's currently under 10 offerings that are authorized under tailored. I think it may be even less than that, but I haven't checked really recently, so mandatory caveat on that. My favorite thing, inertia.
Oh, when I told Shay we should really talk about R4 to R5, like I wish I had a screenshot of his face.
It was not good. Rev 4 was published in September of 2020. There was a revision in December of 2020. As of May of last year, if you're in planning, yeah, use Rev 5. This was the first guidance that we'd gotten regarding shifting for FedRAMP programs. If you're under contract, you could use Rev 4 until September 1st or until your ATO or PATO gets published. And then you need to address how you're going to handle the entire delta, publish it in your poem. We'll get to that later. And then if you're in continuous monitoring, you needed plans by October 2nd. And then if you had your last assessment between January and July, you've got a year to make the switch. Between July and December, complete everything implementation-wise, and testing no later than following your next annual assessment, which could be 3 years out from that point, theoretically. So you could be looking at 5 years after release of Rev 5 before you're actually required to get that in place.
Oh yeah, so this is my favorite password control. The minimum password lifetime. We've had this NIST guidance out for an incredibly long amount of time. I'm not super plugged in on FedRAMP these days. I haven't heard any news about like this particular control will be updated.
Nope.
There's a bunch of other ones that are probably pretty similar that like they don't quite match with modern security guidance, and there's not a lot of great mechanisms to address like, let's jump in and adjust this one control, like because the R4 to R5 shows us we want to do it in like a big set of controls and it takes us years to roll it out. So it was published in 2020. I did a FedRAMP project in 2017, and I remember doing an R4 to R5 Excel matrix diff on like what was going to be the uplift.
So
Oh, it's your
what's our
favorite.
favorite thing in the world. It's POAMs. So the idea was you document what the issue is that you can't resolve right away. Here's the mitigation plan. Your authorizing official has to approve it. Okay. So far, so good. I'm not too concerned about this. I clearly haven't done one yet if I'm not concerned about it at this point. So why are there problems? A huge amount of paperwork and time involved in both creating that initial version of your POAM and then your at least monthly. That works. And your at least monthly updates to your POAM.
There we go.
There we go. So you've gotten a FedRAMP authorization. You're selling to multiple agencies. You now have multiple authorizing officials. So what happens if you submit a new POAM item and authorizing official from agency 1 likes your mitigation plan and authorizing official 2 hates it and won't accept it?
And just as
I'm not
back-
answering the question
Yeah.
because there's no answer to the question.
Well, there is an answer to the question. AO2 can count fans. If you don't like it, don't use it.
So just for people who are not super familiar with what these are, this is how basically you say this control makes no sense from a security perspective. So one of the ones I will pretty much always try to insist people do is FedRAMP requires you to lock accounts after like 10 incorrect password submissions. So if I wanted to break into somewhere, I'm going to go just throw garbage against all the admin accounts that I've identified so that the admins are locked out while I go do whatever the heck I'm going to do. So you can put in a POAM and say no, you know, like maybe we'll do like the escalating delay and so forth, but you have to put a POAM in on that. Like FedRAMP just requires that your admin accounts are going to get locked if someone wants to try cred stuffing against them, or not even cred stuffing, like throwing known garbage so they get locked so you can have your, you know, window of opportunity to go do nonsense. Oh yeah, they stay open forever and you
Yeah.
carry them on forever. Yeah, that locked one's like, you just carry it over and over and over and over and over. And then the Word doc that you have all the stuff in gets corrupted, and then it's fun times.
There you go. So, as we said before, great thing, one-stop shopping. Everything's repeatable. You know, you get through your first agency authorization. Other agencies will come in. They'll say, yes, we have this nice objective program. You have been assessed against it. Agency 1 has authorized you. We certainly don't have any political disagreements with the authorizing official from agency 1. We trust them. Here's your authority to operate. Nothing ever deviates from that, right?
No. You do all this pain, and then it's fun and great, and you sign up all these wonderful agencies as your
Yep.
customers, and it's beautiful.
Do you get a free puppy as well?
Yeah, where's Nugget?
Hold up, Nugget. After your first successful authorization, you get a nugget. Thank you, Kelly.
GovCloud. So AWS, Azure, so forth, ITAR environments. FedRAMP requirements are so damn crazy that no one wants to actually do everything required for it in their normal customer environment. So we bring up entirely special data centers. I mean, and part of this too, especially with doing ITAR, people have to have clearances and so forth. So it's like, that's a whole nother like can of worms. But everybody has a GovCloud.
But Wendy, the OPM says this shouldn't incentivize or require providers to create separate
Yes.
dedicated infrastructure for federal use.
OPM thinks the 853 R4 requirements are like the gold standard of security, and all of our customer environments should just be following them. They totally know what's best for us.
Trust us, we're here from the government. Well, not us, but.
Yeah, no.
So we've spent a lot of time complaining, justifiably, I think, about FedRAMP. Is it fixable? So we can ditch it completely. We're not even going to replace it. We can overhaul it or incremental improvement.
So the whole slowness from R4 to R5 shows it's really painful to do a really big overhaul, and there's sometimes like just some specific controls, like our favorite, the password change one. There should maybe be a mechanism to say like, hey, there's, under modern security guidance, there are specific things that are in a FedRAMP security control set right now that are sort of out of date and have some way to jump in and update them. I mean, I think that the official idea is, oh, you just do a POAM for that control. And that is not a really good solution because it requires each individual service provider to decide that this is what we're going to do, and then you have to go through the whole pane of POAMs over and over. So I would love some sort of mechanism to do this. I'm also going to throw out that as an admin lawyer, I fully understand that like you have to go through something like an NPRM process, and maybe there should be. So maybe like we should have computer security experts weigh in. There's no way that this would actually be super easy and simple, but we just don't really have a good way to do it at all right now.
And the other thing on the POAM as the way to handle, say, the changing password expiration rules is not only is each cloud service provider then handling that, but you're then, again, at the mercy of AOs. And you may have an AO that's like, no, password expiration is where it's at.
People have weird fetishes.
I'm
not going to judge.
So some other suggestions. Require not always using the same 3PAO. Let's get away from this. You sign up once and they're going to be favorable, so you've signed up for life or until they go away, something like that.
I gotta say, this makes me really twitchy. So my company is like a pile of lambdas that runs on S3, and training auditors that we don't even have containers is painful. I can't even imagine doing this in a FedRAMP environment. I mean, there is a auditor education thing that happens, and so it can make it go faster on later years, but like the financial incentives, like.
I teach government auditors about technology you would never pass.
Yeah, oh yeah, our SOC was painful. Yeah, it's good stuff.
Two things, thank you, and I'm sorry. Require that it's actually a one-stop shop. I mean, if this is one of the main goals of FedRAMP, way back when dinosaurs were roaming the earth and I had very little gray hair, let's make it actually happen. And then work on reducing barriers to entry, both cost to get up and running and also paperwork. This is one place where I will actually be a little complimentary, at least to the FedRAMP program. They have made some, I would like to see more, but some very good steps towards automation of items regarding reporting, those sorts of things. I think there's still a long way to go, but steps have been made, and that has been one of the nicest things I've seen in a lot of years regarding FedRAMP. Make POAMs actually work. Make it not suck the lifeblood out of you. Huge amount of time for maintenance. My first FedRAMP engagement, and it wasn't like we had an excessively large or complex POAM. I was completely unprepared for how much time it would then take out of my life after we were up and running. Following not a sales pitch for the company I work for, but the number of people that we have coming to us saying, can you just handle our POAM for you? Can you just handle our POAM for us? It says a lot about how much time and effort it takes.
I mean, the other thing too is, can you just handle our Kanban for us?
Yep.
The scanner found something, and you claim it's not exploitable in your environment, and it would take an insane number of man-hours to update it. Like, why can't you just patch your shit, yo? Which, like, on the one hand, yes, there's a lot of ridiculously outdated software out there. But there's things that just flat out are not exploitable in a particular environment, and like the scanner just found that CVE, and now you have to attempt to explain like why you're not going to patch that. It is painful.
And again, you come back to the AO1 may think it's fine, AO2 may be like, yeah, I don't care if it's unexploitable. You still got to fix it.
Yeah, proving unexploitable is always a fun exercise. Like aggregating them across? Yeah, that would be a good, so the question was, do people aggregate POAMs? And yeah, that'd be a nice way to find things like the admin account lockouts and the password changes. Like if everybody has to do the same POAM, maybe we should standardize it. We
That
should
would be a
put that
great
in.
idea. To the
Yeah.
best of my knowledge, no. Well, but I mean, theoretically,
The
you could
PMO could
aggregate
do
them
it.
within the government and
Yeah.
use that as
Yes.
a data source for updates to FedRAMP, that sort of thing.
Yes, the PMO does need job security, and so they're probably not incentivized to do that. But they are in the position where they could very much do that.
Yep. I'm done. Nice seeing y'all. So back to my buddy Tailored. Do we just get rid of Tailored completely? Make it more useful? Can we learn lessons from both the establishment of the Tailored program that we can use for other programs, or if we are getting rid of Tailored, can we incorporate any of that into the higher impact? And I think we can. Yeah.
Yeah. So I do kind of like the idea of aggregating POAMs. It's kind of cool. But again, if everybody's allowed to be like, hey, like, let's change this control, it could be chaos. You could be like, well, like one thing you know right now is you're going to go in and get a new FedRAMP certification. You're going to be doing 853 R5. When you're going through the preparation process, you know the pain you're going to experience. I mean, maybe you don't fully know the pain you're going to experience, but you got some boundaries around it. It could be incredibly disruptive to get, 3/4 of the way through prep, and then they're like, oh, but you could also do this other weird thing with this other control over here, and it would be really hard to track. Like, I have far too many massive spreadsheets already. I don't know if I need more. And so there's that sort of problem, and there is sort of the admin law problem that I referred to, where you need notice of what you need to comply with, and you need to give people the chance to comment on it, and then even once it's in place, there has to be mechanisms for how to handle updates to it and so forth. You can't just have chaos when you're imposing requirements across people. And like, yes, FedRAMP is not law, but it's the same sort of notice sorts of requirements. I'm sure that we could figure something out here because I really would like to see specific control updates happen in some sort of way. But you're going to get a lot of complaints of people going like, well, I really put an extensive amount of effort into figuring out how I'm going to handle my admin accounts getting locked when people throw garbage at them. And, I didn't know that this was just going to go away.
It was hard for me, it should be hard for you too.
Yes.
Exactly.
Oh my God. All right. So it's hard for me. It should be hard for you. I am an attorney. I don't actually practice, but I took the bar, and it kills me when people are like, but all attorneys should still have to take the bar because I did it and I suffered. We do a lot of that in FedRAMP. So
Questions?
we had some awesome participation, but I'm sure there's even more. So I think there's the microphone up here. Come on up.
I have a really naive question. My friend over there really suffers with stuff like this. He has to do it all the time, and I'm like, why is it so complicated? You guys have jobs trying to meet requirements. Everyone else has to suffer with this. But who sets these requirements, and how do you make them easier? How do you tell them that this sucks balls and none of it works and it's garbage?
I mean, one thing you can do right now is OMB, I believe it's still open as of the moment, does have on regulations.gov, they put that memo up and they're asking for feedback on it.
What is OMB?
Oh, it's in the executive branch. There's sort of a sub-agency which oversees, in theory, IT across various agencies and so forth for some version of overseas. And they put out the original FedRAMP authorizing memo and help set up the JAB, which is DOT, the Joint Authorization Board, which has other agencies in it. And so OMB sort of is meant to be the overseer of this program.
Okay.
So they would be the ones to go. And I know specifically, like, there are people putting good suggestions up. So I know some folks at Let's Encrypt, and a lot of people use Let's Encrypt for their certificates. If you're going through FedRAMP, you have to do a lot of crypto controls around your certificates, and people are constantly asking Let's Encrypt for, like, hey, can we get all this, like, crazy crypto stuff that we shouldn't ordinarily have to use? And so Let's Encrypt put a comment in recently being like, hey, can you either make it clear that you can't use Let's Encrypt certificates for FedRAMP, like, just put that out, you know that you can't start with this and you're going to have to go find some other solution, or make a way for people to use Let's Encrypt certificates without having to provide all of this documentation and so forth that we don't ordinarily provide to our customers. And so that right now is a really good way to provide some of this feedback.
And just before you, just one kind of quick addendum to that. As critical as I am of FedRAMP, just want to kind of reiterate what Wendy said. And like, I know people at OMB, I know people in the FedRAMP PMO. There are people that want this to be a good program and that want this to succeed. And if we can engage with them and help drive change, for all of the things we've said, I'm not counting my chickens, but I'm relatively optimistic there is a hopeful future.
Okay, so question, rant, I'm not sure, we'll figure it out as we go along. If you didn't have a program like FedRAMP, like CMMC, like 800-171, and mandate it, they wouldn't do it. 800-171, every federal contractor was absolutely required to be compliant with as of 2018. My guess is that single percentage points of federal contractors were actually compliant with
Yes.
800-171, okay, by 2018, because like nobody's checking, woohoo, let's go. So you have to have something that is mandated and checked. However, they've designed this, perhaps intentionally, perhaps unintentionally, in such a way that it enriches some people at the expense of the taxpayers to such an extent that it is terrifying.
Yes.
It adds barriers to entry that are so bad that small companies have almost no hope of doing this properly. And they've tried to mitigate that with FedRAMP Ready. So you can go without getting an ATO and say, we are FedRAMP Ready, okay? But you don't need a sponsoring agency. They've tried to put steps in, and I love that. But the fact is that none of these compliance systems, and by the way, I've worked with the 3PAL for the last couple of years. I wrote chunks of CMMC. I know
less fond of HIPAA than Wendy is. I think the answer is something, if we're using HIPAA as kind of a guide point, it's something in between what we've got now with things like FedRAMP, and we just got the get the hell off the stage. Thank you, everyone, for coming out, especially at 10 a.m. on a Saturday.